Welcome to Next Haven Studio T with me, Kiara Cristina Ventura, Next Haven alum, independent curator, and your host. In this series, I'm sitting down with fellow Next Haven alumni for intimate conversations around their practice and journey before, during, and after their fellowship. This interview series is presented in conjunction with the exhibition This Is Not a Retreat, Next Haven Through the Years, and is brought to you by Next Haven and the Ford Foundation Gallery. Hi, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kiara Cristina Ventura, and I'm honored to be in conversation today with Alexandria Smith. Alexandria is a interdisciplinary artist whose richly layered work spanning painting, collage, sculpture, and installation investigate themes of Black femme identity, spiritual memory, and the ghosted language of girlhood. She was a member of Next Haven's very first studio cohort in 2019, and since then, her work has grown across continents, institutions, and major exhibitions. And I'm so excited to get into the whole journey before Next Haven and also after Next Haven to see how you navigated your journey as an artist.
Thank you.
Alexandria, I'm so happy that you're here. If you could just briefly introduce who you are and how you see yourself, that'd be amazing.
So I'm Alexandria Smith, and I am born and raised in the Bronx and New Rochelle, New York. I have been an artist since as long as I can remember. I think my parents have told me that it's as early as 3 years old, I declared I'm an artist. I come from a medical family, not an artistic family. And yeah, I just am always trying to find a way to make art, to create, and to teach. I've always been an educator since as young as 16 years old, and I still consider myself an athlete. Played soccer and basketball most of my life, and although my body isn't up to the challenge as much anymore, I still am very active physically, and that's an integral part of my artistic practice as well.
Nice. So I'm also from the Bronx.
All right. Tracy
Greeting.
Towers.
Yeah, yeah. So I actually grew up near like Bedford Park. So wait, did you also grow up in Tracy
I
Towers?
was in Tracy, yeah, Tracy Towers, yeah, for the first 7 years of my life. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That is a legendary Bronx
I know,
state.
a landmark, right? Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, those towers are very tall. It's the
hmm
architectural yeah, like icon of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Manhattan
definitely.
area. I just have to ask, like, what was
hmm
your like upbringing like in the Bronx, especially in the Tracy Towers?
I remember a good amount, but not a lot because I was there for the first, first handful of years, until
Mhm.
about 7 years old. But I remember the height of the buildings. I remember the look, the texture. I remember playing in the sort of upper region playground of like the parking area or like one of the, I guess it's really it's vague now, but I remember the sounds of the trains and the colors and yeah, I mean I think I was a happy child. My mom's a nurse, a retired nurse now, but I remember going to my babysitter's house and really loving my babysitter and daycare.
Mhm.
And yeah, my dad's a doctor, and so I just have a memory of like what it felt like to be on the balcony. I think we were on the 12th floor. I'd have to double check. So we were pretty high up. I remember that feeling. And I think that maybe where my love of flying or desire to fly has come from being
Uh,
a kid and looking over the Bronx and being excited and feeling that exhilarated feeling.
yeah, I think about that because I deeply do think about a lot of Bronx artists and how does the landscape and the environment of the Bronx
hmm
influence their work, from whether that's the colors or the trains passing by, the more residential, like the Bronx is very like family oriented.
hmm hmm
Goods. So I would love to get into back into that later on in the conversation, since we're going to get more into the themes of your work. In terms of your experience at Next Haven, because
Hmm.
you were in the first ever Next Haven cohort when they
Yeah.
were just getting started. So you were a founding figure in Next Haven's
Hmm.
Global Studio cohort in 2019. How did that moment working alongside other artists and curators shape your sense of community, ambition, and creativity?
I was really excited. I've always been sort of community minded and always wanted to find a sort of artistic community. And so when I got into Next Haven, I believe at the time I was teaching full time at Wellesley College, which isn't too far from Next Haven or from New Haven. And yeah, I was excited to just be in a cohort with artists that I'd also admired, and we, had sort of come up in a similar way at a similar time, just not, some years out of grad school, trying to establish ourselves as artists and understand what it means to be a full-time working artist, which seems to be an anomaly when you, even in grad school, no one really teaches you. It's not something you can teach, but you can equip artists with the skills to know how to navigate the landscape. And I felt like Next Haven was that opportunity because it wasn't just another artist residency. There were professional development workshops and conversations with other experts in the field that I felt would support my practice and business as an artist that I didn't have before. I was kind of winging it and learning as I go, and I was, had the opportunity to develop relationships with full-time artists as a result of grad school, and those were who I was looking to help teach me what it means to how to do this thing as an artist, this life as an artist. And Next Haven wasn't complete. The building was half finished. We just had the studios. Everything else was a construction zone. So to see it now, I was just there a few weeks ago. It's a beautiful community, a beautiful program, and a beautiful building. So yeah, really happy that I was a part of it.
Yeah, I think I visited, I think in 2019. I did visit when it was still being built, and I remember
Hmm.
the side where all the studio fellows studios were was only
Hmm.
built. And I do
Yeah.
remember seeing just like legit rubble. And then Titus was like doing a tour and he was like, so we're gonna have
Yeah.
this and we're gonna have this. So like joining the cohort in 2022 was is such a major shift. A
Yeah.
lot of growth has happened.
Definitely.
So I can
Definitely.
just imagine that experience in 2019 when
Yeah.
it was being birthed to what.
It was, yeah.
Okay, so I also want to talk about your experiences in academia because you
Hmm.
have some degrees under your belt.
Yeah.
Um, you hold a BFA in illustration from Syracuse, a MA in art education from NYU,
Hmm.
an MFA in painting and drawing from Parsons, and you served as head of painting at the Royal College of Art from 2019 to 2023. And I'm also really I was so excited to learn that you were also a art school teacher in
Yes.
Uptown. Shout out to Uptown in Harlem and
Hmm.
the Bronx. So
Yeah.
how do these layered educational and leadership roles continue to inform the questions you bring to the studio today? Like how does that relationship also having students? Because I know students
Hmm.
and being around young people too, that
Yeah.
also can bring up a lot as an artist.
I think they are inextricably linked and connected. My career as an educator, my career as an artist, because I mean, I think, when I was teaching middle school and high school for almost nearly a decade in the South Bronx in Harlem, it was really learning how to simplify language and simplify this sort of anomaly that is art and show students and help them to see how critical and it is to see art, how they're seeing art every day, how critical it is to engage with art, and that it's all around them. as opposed to being some sort of, I wasn't coming to it as some elitist artist in the world that is showing them and teaching them that art is going to help their community or better them, but really engaging them in the process and the making process so that they could find a value themselves and find the value in what it means to be a maker and not having to be great, but knowing that it's about the process and the journey of getting there as opposed to this final product replicating a photograph. Because a lot of times when they're younger, that's how they calculate or quantify your skill level is, oh, does this look like the photo? And
Mhm.
so, I enjoyed that sort of um, way of teaching. It helped me to also think about my own work and look at art from my peers in a similar way, or for legends that I admire in a similar through similar eyes. What does it mean to break things down and simplify things, and how can I access this, and what am I learning from this experience of looking that I can then bring into the work that I make? And a lot of that is why it led to me using symbolism, color, and language in ways that children see and look at art and create art. Um, and and then moving into the academic, working with adults, young adults, I say, and older adults, because I was at Wellesley College from 2016 to 2019. Before that, prior to that, I spent a year as a visiting artist and professor at the University of Iowa. And prior to that, I was doing a residency sort of romp, as I call it. And then again, during academic teaching at Wellesley, I was also applying for and participating in a lot of residencies. And on an academic level, there's a freshness and an excitement that young people have. They're not as jaded by the art world. They feel like anything is possible. They're inquisitive, they're excited, they're intelligent beyond belief, and can articulate things and create things in a way that is inspiring for me. And I don't do it for selfish reasons. I don't do it to see what I can get out of it. I do it because I love it, but also because it's mutually beneficial. I'm learning and experiencing and being challenged just as much as they are. I think about it the way Bell Hooks looks at teaching, and especially in teaching to transgress. She talks about that she is just a facilitator, right? It's an exchange. We're all teachers, we're all learning, and we're all students at the same time. There is no hierarchy other than the role we serve as facilitators and maybe having a little bit more experience in one particular space. And I think that's really important to keep in mind. So yeah, I mean, I think that's all of those things have really fueled and nourished my practice as an artist.
I love how you spoke to blurring the lines also between professor and student,
Mhm.
where it's like an equal relationship where what they bring to the table, their thoughts, their questions, their ideas
Hmm.
also fuel you as a
Yeah.
teacher and a facilitator. I will never forget there was this one professor I had at NYU. The name of the class was called Art Matters. And
Mm,
day of class, it was in like a lecture hall style
hmm.
classroom. And I'll never forget the first day of class, the professor was like, come in and you can sit wherever you want. You can sit on the stage, you can sit in the middle of the hallway, you can sit in the
Hmm.
back corner. And she was trying to highlight like we are here actually to learn from each other. Like don't think of how this space is architecturally made for me to just talk to you and lecture you, you know.
Yeah.
So I love how you fully embrace that as a
Yeah.
professor and a facilitator.
Thank
So,
you.
in terms of what you're doing now as a
Hmm.
professor, assistant professor and director of undergraduate studies at Yale, how
Yes.
does mentoring emerging artists there help shape your thinking around identity, materiality, and form?
So yeah, I mean, I think working both with the undergrads in a more leadership, like administrator role in studio art, and then working as, professor with the grad students. So I'm teaching and working with both groups, right, that are drastically different. And a lot of the grads, like I said before, I think that sort of excitement and feeling of possibility, of grand possibility exists between both grads and undergrads, but in a different way. I find it interesting that the questions I get from them are similar with some slight variations because they're all wondering, well, how do I do this after I leave this protective bubble of school? And that's the ultimate question, right? Because there isn't any one way or one formula. But how does it inform identity form, you said in my own work? I think I don't know if it's I have a direct answer for that. Um, but I do think that it is they keep me on my toes, is what I can say. They keep the mindset of being open to experimentation and open to possibility is what they keep sort of fresh in my own mind, in my own body when it comes to working. I think at this stage, I've never, as a Gemini, I proclaimed Gemini that we get bored easily, we're told is what the horoscope says. But for me, I have to constantly be utilizing all aspects of my body. And so that means on both a micro and macro level. And I think that combined with being in the classroom keeps me yearning for experimentation, but also yearning for commitment and seeing things through to completion, which is what I think they all possess. Grad and undergrad alike possess those same skills and are focused on that in school. So that's played a huge role and been a huge influence in my work. I don't know that it impacts. I mean, I think existing in a brown queer body means that you're always hyper aware and hyper visible of your own existence and how you occupy space because that is how society has conditioned us to maneuver. So I think I'm always thinking about those things and wanting to make sure that I'm as much of an advocate for my own existence as I am for my students' existence. And that's why being an educator is so critical and significant, especially now.
Especially now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of your work,
Hmm.
I know you weave together collage,
Hmm.
painting, installation, and sculpture to explore femme selfhood, cultural memory, spiritual dimensions, which I love. Um, how do you orchestrate these media together to invite layered storytelling? Because when I see your work, I see so many layers. I see the environment, but the environment could also be abstract. I'm seeing like blurred environments. Are we inside? Are we outside?
Hmm.
I see limbs. I see just maybe gravity not even existing.
Hmm.
So I'd love to just if you could take us into your world.
I think it's all trusting, and I've been saying this for a long time, trusting my intuition. I think intuition as praxis, intuition as a pedagogical framework is neglected in the art world. We artists talk about it, but it's not looked at from an intellectual standpoint. A lot of what I do is driven by my intuition. It's intuitionally motivated, I will say. And that's the first part. It's really trusting myself and trusting what I feel after all these years of making. And then thinking back from what is it that I'm feeling? What is it that I want to feel? What do I want the viewers to feel, and working backwards from that. How do I use all the tools at my disposal to create or try to create those feelings and that sort of metamorphosis in the viewer. And I am a printmaker. I am a collage artist. I have I don't know if I'd say I'm a sculptor because I don't, but I love sculpture and I make installations I have made installations with found objects. So I think it's really my love of all these materials and how they challenge and bring a new sort of language into the conversation, into the work that I focus on. And I think that in drawing is really is nothing is able to become if it doesn't start as a drawing first for me. So I guess how I do that is really um, a lot of thinking and a lot of just like playing. And collage to me is about play. It's about sort of in some ways creating the childhood that I grew up with, the 80s childhood of cartoons and funny and satire and humor and satire and more analog ways of like we were I mean as an 80s baby, the analog was it, and people were coming with really creative, innovative ways to incorporate the analog traditions and tools into television. I think about Pee Wee's Playhouse and Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street and Fat Albert and The Simpsons and like all these cartoons and television shows and programs that honed in on and encouraged the spirit of play and trying things out and seeing where it takes you. And that's really, I don't know that I think about it in a formulaic way. I just think I'm looking at this drawing, it starts with my hand, and then I figure out or see, I feel like I need to see this in paint, or I feel like I need to see this in the round and in an immersive space. And it just decides. I just try to be quiet and listen as much as possible, and let it tell me let the work tell me where it wants to go.
When I look at your work, I'm not surprised that you said like the cartoons, and it just reminds me of like, I don't know, at grandma's house, they'll have like always something on the TV, or if there's kids in
Hmm.
the house, they'll always have the TV running, like on Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
I definitely see that influence in your work of like even the way like the limbs are drawn, or how they're in space and the colors
Hmm.
come out too. I'm thinking of it from like that lens of like a TV show. Do
Yeah.
you see your figures as characters in like a fictional story? And do you see yourself as kind of like a writer in that way? And if so, like,
Yeah.
who are these characters to you and what is your relationship to them?
I definitely do. And I do consider myself a writer. I've been saying a closet writer up until maybe the last year. I stopped calling myself a closet writer. I am a writer because I think that I say this to my students, and I need to apply the same sort of logic. Just because you're not doing the thing doesn't take that identity away from you. So even if I'm not writing, that doesn't mean that I'm not a writer. Even if I'm not creating in that moment, I'm still an artist. I'm always thinking through that lens and that framework. And so I do consider myself a writer, and I am trying to figure out how to articulate these worlds that I've created, from the visual language into the verbal and auditory and written language, which they're different languages that we're using. And the reason I use the visual and I revert to the visual is because that's my inclination. That feels the most natural to me. So then to use another language to sort of articulate what's happening visually is incredibly difficult to do. But so I'm trying to figure that out. So that being said, I am a writer. I do write. I do look at the work that I'm making as part of the written language. And it's also influenced by the written language, by books, by the magical realism genre, fantasy, surrealism. And I hesitate to name them. There's some characters that I've named, whether it's like a shorthand sort of nickname or an actual like permanent name that they have. There is some naming that happens, but I noticed that I'm a little hesitant and sort of resistant to do that because for some reason the naming feels like I am taking away their autonomy and agency as characters. They become something that I guess is a sense of ownership that I feel might stagnate them. So I don't want to do that. And I recognize in talking to you actually in this moment that that is part of the problem as to why I can't write about them. Um, I can write in prose. I've written in prose. I've written some poetry a little bit, but I am working on a fiction story, maybe it's a novel, not sure, with this one character that has been named from the very beginning, from when I was in grad school at Parsons. She has always been named. And I think she's been named because she was sort of a stand-in or a representative avatar, so to speak, of me when I was younger, when I was a child. So there's a direct personal relationship to her. Her name is Marjorie, which is also my middle name, which is also my grandmother's name, was my grandmother's name. She's since passed. So naming her feels like I am actually giving her a place in the world that she didn't have before. So the naming does the opposite with this character. Whereas I worry and feel like the naming of the other characters will have the opposite effect where they become erased or they lose their autonomy and their freedom. So it's tricky. Long story, long-winded way of saying it's incredibly tricky, but I'm working through
Okay, wait, this brought up so much for me because
it.
I mean, I totally get it because if you name them, um, they don't live in the abstract as much. And I think that's the downfall of spoken language is that, you do have to be specific with your words to describe a scene or to describe a person. What were they wearing? What do they look like? And then it goes into perception. And especially if you want the figures in your world to be abstract. And also, I feel like abstraction is in line with freedom in a lot of ways. So I could see that there, but it's also interesting hearing you talk about the figures in your work because it also sounds like mothering in a lot of ways. I'm hearing
That
like
is true.
I want
Yeah.
them, yeah, I want them to live their own life, I want
That's a
their
good
own.
point. I never thought about it like that. Yes,
So,
totally.
but I could also see poetry being a safe space, I guess, in language, because you can be a bit more abstract in that realm too.
Hmm. Hmm.
So sounds like an exciting world that you have been building for years.
Yes. Yeah.
So I do want to talk about some of your major exhibitions happening.
Hmm.
Your third solo exhibition with Gagosian, Stirrings of Polymorphous Bloom in Hong Kong,
Hmm.
marks
Hmm.
a high professional milestone. How did working at that scale and context shift your studio rhythm and concepts of your work?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking me that at a good time. It's been over a year since that show came down. So I will say that I don't have gallery representation. I still don't. And I've been grateful and blessed to have opportunities arise without having through sort of an unconventional pathway as an artist, right? Like residencies, trying to just make the work while also teaching, which sustains my practice, while then, having to be in one show, shows here and there, have like a popcorn, I call it a popcorn exhibition history, right? It's like here, pop, 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 little by little. Sometimes it intensifies, sometimes there's a lull. And so working with a high profile gallery like the Gagosian is or was definitely a challenge in all the best ways. I think it was almost like a boot camp for what it means to be a professional artist for me that I'm still learning from a year later. And a lot of it was because I was permitted before this a slow sort of practice. I work at a rapid rate, or I feel not rapid, I work at a moderately fast rate when it comes to making paintings, when it comes to coming up with ideas, because I have so many and they don't all get executed or materialized. So I just, sort of, they build up and I accumulate a lot of ideas. So I wanted to make work that would embrace the sort of scale, not just the scale, the literal scale of the space and the gallery, but the scale of even my own like ideas and concepts and look at what it meant to look through stacks and stacks of sketchbooks and decide which works were embodying this concept of light, the spiritual, the physical, the psychological aspects of light. Um, and what does it mean to create work around that? concept, then what does it mean to create work at a scale that I've never worked before? I tend to have this contentious relationship with scale. Like I really love going big, and I think that's about occupying space and occupying the psychic space of myself, of the viewers, but also the space of a gallery. And that gallery, it's not a ground floor gallery in Hong Kong, but it had large ceilings, high ceilings. So I was making work that I could not fit in my studio. There was a triptych that was, I think, a total of like 20 feet long. Is three panels by I think 16 feet, or sorry, 7 feet by like 15 or 16 feet. I've never made a painting on wood at that scale with this assemblage sort of approach. And seeing it in my studio and looking back on pictures of it in my studio where I could not look at the entire painting at the same time. I had to look at each panel one at a time and create in a fragmented way, which is also an incredible challenge. And I learned a lot about what it means to allow for an opportunity to um, push against push against all of the walls that exist in my body, and push it to the point of, or I should say it's like a rubber band, like pulling it to the point of hopefully not having it not pop or break. And that was an experience I'll never forget. I lived up to the challenge. I executed in the best way that I was able to at that time, and I was very proud of that body of work. And I think I will be for the foreseeable future because it was all the things that I wanted to present. It was ambitious in scales, ambitious in color and thought. I also was working with techniques and technology in a way that I hadn't worked with before, and figuring out how can I make elements of these paintings and impose themselves in our own actual like real world, and what does it mean to do that within a painting, and push outside of what does it mean to have a painting and create a painting that sort of blurs the line between painting and sculpture and installation.
Wow, I mean, I wasn't there in Hong Kong, but that the experience of the exhibition sounds like really encapsulating and also immersive.
Mhm.
And I'm happy that you had that experience. It sounds like a very intense experience to like be in the
Yes,
studio and make that work. That does it sounds like no joke,
I
but
was not.
I know that feeling of like when you have a big vision and you do it,
Mhm.
and you can finally like cross it off your list of like I did that.
Yeah, yeah,
It
definitely.
sounds
It
like
was
a
really good.
yeah, yeah. It sounds really
Hmm.
like you did that. You did that.
Yeah,
Shout out to you for
thank
making
you.
that milestone for sure. And
Thank you.
thinking of your also other spaces that you've gone across of like the Queen's Museum when you did Monuments to an Effigy, the
Hmm.
Carrier Museum, Memoirs of a Ghost Girlhood, and the Davis
Hmm.
Museum. What moment during those times of having showings there have surprised or moved you the most? Was there like any interactions with the public
Mm,
that stuck with you or memories from those experiences?
yeah. I mean, unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to visit the Currier Museum exhibition outside of the install and the opening. So I don't know how the public was impacted. The Currier Museum was undergoing a lot of like staff transitions also. So I didn't, the person I've been working with is no longer there. So unfortunately, I'm not sure. I do know that working with I'm forgetting, I have to tell you the name. Working with that organization on the ground
Mhm.
was inspiring and moving. But in terms of the Queens Museum and the Davis Museum, I think both of those works were up for a longer period of time. The Davis Museum, the installation, it was a window installation called Seeds to Harvest. And that one was up for 3 years as opposed to 1 year because of COVID. And so I had one of my closest friends who was also a professor at Wellesley sending me photos of it as the seasons changed, which was incredible. And having students and faculty still to up until this year wanting to reference it and asking for, image permissions and maybe some quotes from me to reference it even now, it shows me that, okay, it did have an impact and had an impact in a way that I hoped for. Because it was about being seen. It was about seeing and knowing the history of a place that is predominantly a PWI, a predominantly white institution, in a town that is incredibly elitist in a very wealthy town. And so, what does it mean to make this installation that was honoring the first Black graduates of Wellesley College, going back to 1860 with Harriet Allen Rice, which I had no idea until I did the research. And it all stemmed from my interest in understanding the the history of enslaved peoples in that place, in that city, and knowing that there's a house in Wellesley, Massachusetts, that was a stop along the Underground Railroad. And similarly, at the same time, I believe was when I had the Queens Museum show. Both were in 2019. So they informed each other, and it all started with learning about doing this deep internet dive and learning about the history of the Underground Railroad and the people, the enslaved people that went through there that created opportunities for everyone else. And that was sort of the foundation of those two projects. And the interaction I had with the Queens Museum, of people of Queens and the Queens Museum was, I mean, is incredibly profound. It was incredibly moving because it was also a sound installation. And then the performance of that sound installation was activated and performed during the opening and again midway through the duration of the show. And so I could feel and see the engagement, the multi-generational engagement with the exhibition, as well as learning about and having direct conversations with people, with residents of Queens, of Flushing, about it. And it all started with like a desire to imagine my paintings in the round in a way and create a multi-sensory exhibition that allowed for everyone to have an experience, whether physically disabled, visually impaired. My father was visually impaired. So children, young people, because Queens Museum is the one museum I feel is more about the people and engage with the community more than other museums. Yeah, I felt it. I felt all of it. And it's made me want to do more of that kind of work.
It's so beautiful to hear you speak about the importance of how people interact with your work. Because I also hear you as like an educator, like you want
Hmm.
people to, feel, to see, to hear, have these intimate interactions with your work because that's a way of learning as well.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I love how you're also bringing up histories that people may have not known and using that as a point of education. And I think that's what
Hmm.
brings people closer to the work. At least for me, like I
Yeah,
love looking at work and I may not have known the story behind it. And then like I read up on it or I see some symbols and then it brings you in. And then you learn like a fun fact about the work. And then you're like, whoa, now this work has
yeah.
a bigger presence to me and it's
Hmm.
more memorable. So I'm not surprised that
Yeah,
people are memory like remembering your work as almost like a landmark in a lot of ways.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's a great way to look at it. Thank you.
So thinking of where you are now in your practice, having bridged galleries, museums, international exhibitions, and also academia, what frontier, whether it's material, conceptual, relational, feels most urgent for your next body of work now?
Mm. Mm.
Where's your intention, going towards next in terms of your next body of work?
I think I feel like I was in and have been in very much a transitional year or period, I should say, era, mainly because I moved back to New York from London a few years ago. It's only been a year and a half, almost 2 years now, actually. And so there's been a lot of readjusting and getting reacclimated and to that change. And I want to, with that being said, I want to, I'm making a body of work. I'm making a new series of paintings that I'm still working through the conceptual, like what they conceptually are about. I think I'm sort of piggybacking off of the last show in many ways, where that was about light, and I think this is about change. It's about transformation, and these characters are transforming in many ways. So I think it's still like the thread is still there. It's being pulled through this new body of work. But I think I also simultaneously am thinking about how can I create more work or something more ambitious that does um, engage with the public more directly. I think that, although all the shows you mentioned at the Davis Museum, at Queens Museum, and at Curry Museum were works like paintings that I'm working on now, I think that I see the work that I'm making be more, I guess, explicit, more direct in how they engage with the public. I don't know. I'm trying to say it without saying it because I don't want to share exactly what I'm thinking about, but bringing them into our physical space more with more intention and more ambition is what I envision. So whether it be, film, video, television, public art. Like those are the realms that I'm looking to and exploring.
Well, I'm excited to see whatever it is that's up next and
Thank
maybe the
you. Yes.
public realm. Um, I think that goes right into also your intentions around accessibility. So I'm excited
Hmm.
for
Hmm.
to see it come
Thank
into.
you.
And thinking of future intentions as well, is there a format or collaboration, like a site-specific performance, a book, maybe a film, that you're yearning to explore but haven't yet?
Definitely. Yes, there is. There is a format that brings me that I guess I'm also trying to say this without saying it. Yeah, that format that I'm exploring and I think some ways is trying to bring things back to the sort of innovation, lightheartedness, and an educational component of what public television's role was and has been for a very long time.
And we're just gonna leave it at that because you have to sit and wait for whatever is next to fully
Yeah,
experience it.
yes, it may be a while, but we'll see.
We'll wait. Good things take time.
Definitely, definitely.
So I have a fun closing question. Um, if your expanding visual vocabulary could speak through music, what kind of sonic landscape would it inhabit today? So
Oh
if
man,
you're
I
painting,
mean,
it could be an album, a song, like what would that sonic?
yeah, so books and music are my heart and soul outside of art. I have my dad to thank for that. And books from my mom, I have my mom to thank for that. My dad was an avid reader as well. But music, I feel like I was trained by the dock of Harlem, I'll say. And jazz is it. An existing album that I continue. There's two that I continue to go back to. I'm a Prince and Janet Jackson lover, but I will say that I came to love Prince later in life. And I came to love Janet Jackson, I would say, yes, as a kid, Rhythm Nation, but really the Janet album. And I would say that it's Miles Davis, Bitches Brew, and Comfort Woman by Michelle and Digiacello. And
Okay.
maybe I'll throw in Velvet Rope, Janet Jackson, of course. And I'll throw in actually The Rainbow Children by Prince. So those four
Okay.
albums.
I see Janet. I see some dance in your work. I see dance. I see
Yeah,
a lot of movement and a lot of like I love how Janet, she has a lot of autonomy,
yeah. Hmm.
body, the way that she moves, her presence. I
Hmm.
can see the relations. I might have to listen to those songs and albums after this and like look at your
Definitely.
work to fully
Definitely.
Well, thank you so much
Thank you.
for being a part of the series. Um, Last question is,
Hmm.
where can people follow your work, look into your work, any social medias? How can they follow?
Yeah, so my website, alexandriasmith.com. I always say Alexandria with an I. People leave that out often. And then my social media, Instagram, it's Alexandria Smith Studio on Instagram. So those are the two main ways to stay in touch. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. And
Thank
I
you, Kiara. Thank you.
thank you for like honestly sharing your work, sharing about your practice. It was honestly a educational experience for me to get like the insight and get into the layers of your work.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you.